Welcome to the CRTPA Board meeting for September 19th at 1:30 p.m. Glad to have everybody here. This meeting is called to order, and let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Yes. Commissioner Cox, Commissioner Hosford, Commissioner Goldwire. Here. Commissioner Messersmith. Here. Commissioner Neesmith. He's here.
He's here.
Commissioner Minor.
Here.
Commissioner Maddox. He's somewhere. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Here.
Commissioner Matlow.
Here.
Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
All right, thank you very much. And we do have a quorum, is that correct? Stated for the record.
Yes, Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you very much. We wanted to introduce a new member of the CRTPA. Commissioner Riley Goldwire is with us. Could you please give an introduction about yourself, ma'am?
Oh, sure. I'm Commissioner Evelyn Riley Goldwire with the City of Gretna. I'm a commissioner there, and I guess I'm representing the Gadsden municipalities.
Great. Well, listen, thank you for being with us, and I think you'll find this is a good group to work with. I think, well, actually, I shouldn't prejudice you on that. Just tell us at the end of the meeting what you think, okay? And we'll go from there.
Okay, tell you
so
what.
I don't want to taint your opinion on the working group here, but after the meeting's over, let us know what you think.
Okay.
All right. First of all, our executive director, Greg Slay, actually has jury duty as we speak. So he's doing another public service in addition to his role on the CRTPA. So we wish him well. And we've also got, serving in his stead, we've got Jack Castrua here with us. So Jack is going to work with me on conducting today's business. So Jack, welcome. Good to have you here. You've always been here.
Quick note, I've always been here. I'm just stepping in this role.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you for qualifying that.
We have seen you before.
Yes, we've seen him around. Yep, absolutely. Well, Jack, any agenda modifications?
No, we're moving forward.
Okay. Any public comment on items not appearing on the agenda? None? Okay. Let's see. Next, we've got the consent agenda, and we'll give this over to you, Jack.
There's a number of items that we're presenting for the consent agenda, so if there's any questions, we have staff here to answer those.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by Commissioner O'Keefe. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Chair, in the consent agenda, there are some RTPA bylaws that are updated. Typically, we would get a motion that would allow us to make any scrivener changes to bylaws.
You hear that? Is there a motion stated?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second for that motion?
Second.
All right. Motion's been made by Commissioner Richardson, seconded by Commissioner Messersmith. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next we've got our roll call vote agenda items. We've got number 6A. Mr. Castruga.
Suzanne?
Any questions about these two amendments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes. You stated that the funds were not utilized where they, it's just because they weren't needed, the project was completed, or the funds were not used at all?
The project was not completed. It was funded at the sort of tail end of COVID. And to get the project going again, Gadsden County needed to go through a couple of processes to get certified to manage the project. They have since done that. So the funds sit there, and then they roll forward now so that Gadsden County can enter into agreement with FDOT to complete that sidewalk project. Just so you know, there were funds added as well to make sure the project was whole.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions? Also, would you let the record reflect that Commissioner Williams-Cox is with us? Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
All right, motion's been made by Commissioner Neesmith, seconded by Commissioner O'Keefe. All in favor of the motion to approve, to ratify the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Excuse
Roll
me.
call.
Can we back up just
Oh,
a
roll
second?
call.
May I have a roll call vote,
Yes,
please?
you're correct. Thank you. All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Goldwire?
Yes.
Commissioner Messersmith?
Yes.
Commissioner Neesmith?
Yes.
Commissioner Minor?
We heard you.
Yes.
Commissioner Maddox? Commissioner O'Keefe?
Yes.
Commissioner Matlow?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Williams Cox? Unanimously passes.
Great, thank you, Yolanda. And also let the record reflect that Commissioner Maddox has joined us. All right, next order of business, CRTPA action, 7A. Jack.
Every year, we have to go through the identification of financial statements, and you're going to hear Suzanne's name quite a bit today because she has agenda items on here, so I'll turn it over to Suzanne.
Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ben Clark with James Moore. He's at the podium, and he has a little handout that you can follow as we go through. Can I have the next slide, please? There we go. No, the one before, I'm sorry. And this is now our 4th year working with James Moore and Associate, and we're really pleased to state that we are still considered a low-risk agency and that there were no material findings. Thank you. Please, Ben.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. So again, my name is Ben Clark, and I'm with James Moore & Company, so we're the CPA firm tasked with doing the annual audit for CRTPA. We were not told that Greg would not be here ahead of time, so kind of there was a joke about 2 sets of books. Well, we have 2 audits, so I'm going to go ahead and get the one that has a lot of findings in it, and we'll just talk about that one. Nobody likes that one? Okay. So we'll just keep the one that has that's clean, the one you're looking at in front of you. So I will go ahead and spoil that. We did the presentation to the executive committee a couple weeks ago, and yeah, like I said, the audit for this year is clean. There are a number of things I can go over on a high level with you. We went over this in kind of great detail with the exec board members. And so as far as the audit goes, there is obviously an audit every year. You're required to have one by state statute, and you're also required to have a single audit due to the level of expenditures that you all expend each year on usually DOT-type projects, road projects, et cetera. And so with that, our responsibility as the auditors is just to give you an opinion on your financial statements, to look at obviously all your grants and things like that, and to give you an opinion. Our audit is made up of 5 reports. You can see that kind of down in the audit report section. And so of those reports, there is a report on the financial statements. That is an unmodified opinion. And so that means that's the best opinion yet. That means the statements that are in your packet that you're looking at are materially correct. And so you can rely on those for decision-making purposes and anything else you do. There's also a report in there on internal control and compliance. That's usually the report you'd go to if you had a question about is there findings, is there internal control issues at CRTPA, and we have nothing to report on you on that front, so there is, that's what we call clean as far as that goes. There's a similar report that we look at internal controls and compliance with just your state and your federal grants, and so that's required as well, and we have nothing to report to you on that front that's unmodified as well, and that obviously is the one where we kind of have to do a deep dive into what grants were expended upon during the year, make sure the funds were expended properly, and so on and so forth on that front. So we looked at all that, and we have nothing to report to you on that front. The other report is the examination report. That just is one that the state really asked us to look at investments and other things in that kind of category, and nothing, again, to report to you on that. The only recommendation we had this year was with what's called the Auditor General letter. So that's kind of the all else other matters kind of letter. So it's just usually where recommendations go for state, local governments, or governmental type clients. And with regard to that, we just had one recommendation that we discussed at the meeting where we want grant revenue and expenditures to be reconciled in a little bit different manner, and those really should be about equal every year. And so we kind of worked with management on that and kind of looked at some things on that front. So not really a finding, it's just more of a recommendation, hey, we need to look at this and reconcile a little differently, make sure it kind of all balances out at year end. So other than that, some of the financial highlights listed at the bottom of the handout there. During the year, there was $1.1 million in grant revenue received, and the total fund balance at year end, which is really the number that most governments tend to focus on, is $127,000 at year end. The other thing we put in the financial highlights section is there is a deficit in the governmental activities, and we just kind of put that out there to say, hey, there's no concerns here. That deficit is only there because you have to put what some people might call funny money numbers in the overall accrual statements. So that'd be like your net pension liability and your OPEB liability. Those are liabilities that really, they just have to do for the exercise of putting them on there. But for all intents and purposes, the concerns with those is, hey, are you making your pension contributions? And the answer to that is yes. And then we just have to put the liability on there because we're required to for accounting purposes. So the fund balance is positive. So as far as that's concerned, we're all good on that front. And so there is another page that you can flip to, or you can look up on the handout that has kind of the picture of what the balance sheet and the revenues, expenses looks like for that year. But otherwise, I can answer any and all questions. But that was the audit for 9/30/22.
Great, thank you very much. I said this during the executive committee, but I used to run a large nonprofit that was required to file a single audit every year. And working with those auditors on that, I mean, we've got quite a bit of documentation here as a result of the audit, but I can tell you the number of deliverables that, a team has to go through in terms of creating just this set of documentation is extensive. So, I mean, you can see a lot of work has been done with the audit, but even behind that audit documentation, there's multiple deliverables that had to be done to get to this point. So I just want to thank James Moore and everything that you all are doing, and also to congratulate the CRTPA team for a successful audit. So thank you very much. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is this a technical accounting question, Commissioner?
I'm sure it is.
This is representing the citizens question, and as a former auditor, it's always dangerous to make jokes as an auditor. Can you confirm my understanding when you talked about our deficit in net position? It's really because of the theoretical pension liabilities that the state requires us to put on. So if I'm reading this statement right, our deficit is roughly $266,000, and if I wanted to back out the theoretical liabilities that we're required to put on there, I would back out the $826,000, bringing us to, ignoring those theoretical pension liabilities, a net position positive around $500,000. Is that understanding correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anything else from our CRTPA? All right, do I hear a motion? Okay, motion's been made to accept by Commissioner O'Keefe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Maddox. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you again for all your work.
Thanks for working with me. I appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Castrua, next item, please.
Moving on to State Road 267, shared use path trail feasibility study. We have Gary Phillips from HAF. And Gary, that one won't work, so you're shooting that way. Yeah. We've started this project about a year ago, taking a look at construction of a trail along State Road 267 block cutoff from the St. Mark's Trail to the Wakulla Springs State Park. Or the feasibility study, which will be moving to the final. And then after Gary's done, I'll update you on some of the other things that we're moving forward with. Part of it. Thank you. Gary, go ahead.
Thanks, Jack. Good afternoon, board members. So this is an update we gave you back in April. We'll be recommending a preferred route today. But we'll go over the location and purpose, planning consistency issues. We'll talk about Wakulla Springs unit management plan, existing typical mapping that was done. There's a bridge over McBride Slough, an intersection analysis at Shadeville Highway, stakeholder outreach. We had a public meeting on June 29th. We'll show some of that. And then we'll end up with the recommended alternative and next steps. So the project is located along State Road 267, also known as Bluxom Cutoff Road, starting at Wakulla Springs entrance, going all the way over to St. Mark's Trail, where St. Mark's Trail comes down Old Woodville Road, approximately 4.8 miles. The purpose, as Jack was saying, is to identify and evaluate reasonable alternatives and carry forward into a preferred trail route. This project is consistent with multiple plans, including the Capital City to the Sea Trail Plan, Wakulla County Bike Pedestrian Plan, and Edward Ball Wakulla Springs State Park Unit Management Plan, which I'll talk about now. So that unit management plan was updated in December of last year, and I highlighted in red there, they included the multi-use trail that we're recommending that we build in the future within their property. Currently, it's a service road, approximately 1.5 miles. Right there, it runs about 150 feet off of DOT right-of-way on the south side. So all of our alternatives that we looked at recommend using this portion. It's about 1.5 miles, as I said, which is about a third of the entire length. The other plan that they have, they're considering is to change the entryway from a two-way to a one-way. So currently, when you come into Wakulla Springs from 267, go both directions, they want to make it a one-way and convert half of that to the trail for future use. And then when you exit to the west side. And they've got some other things that they're showing there as well. They're also suggesting that there be a connection to Rosa Shingles Trailhead, which is on the north side there, on the right there where the red circle is. That's an existing trailhead. It services Wakulla Springs State Forest area. There's multiple trails. There's an equestrian facility there. So a lot of good stuff was in there. If you drive into Wakulla Springs, I'm sure many of you have over the years, this is the service road there, kind of sticking out there. So that would be where the trail would connect to Wakulla Park Drive, and then you would ride your bike into Wakulla Springs and Wakulla Lodge area. And again, as I mentioned, the plan is to convert that currently two-way entryway into a one-way in only, and then for bikes, it would be a two-way lane or two bike lanes, whatever, 5 foot each lane. So that's the plan. That's part of the unit management plan that they put together. This is another view of that service road, so it's very wooded. It's ideal for a multi-use trail. There's lots of shade, there's cover. It has a rock and stone base currently being used by equipment by Wakulla Springs State Park. So again, it's perfect location for the trail. Another shot of that. If you go further to the west, this is where the service road connects to SR 267. So that would be the limits of the 1.5 miles, and then you come back onto SR 267, either on the north side or the south side, and we'll talk about which one we'll recommend. Moving on to State Road 267 itself, the existing typical section, it's a standard 12-foot travel lane, rural roadway, arterial. It has 4-foot paved shoulders on both sides, and then 6-foot wide sod shoulders, so 10-foot total. There's 100 foot of right-of-way, 50 foot from center line. Traffic volumes are relatively low, 2,300 per day. It's been pretty flat over the last 5 years looking at DOT data, and truck traffic is about 15%. Looking at some of the environmental mapping characteristics, speed limit on the peripheral on both sides is 45 miles an hour and then increases to 55 miles per hour. Looking at the driveways that are out there, we put them into 4 different categories. I know you guys can't see that too well, but there's commercial driveways in orange. The purple are open land driveways. In the middle of this area, there's a 400-acre privately owned facility, and that's where you see the purple dots. Those are really where there's open land driveways. Residential driveways, there's 31 orange dots on the south side, sort of on the eastern half of your picture. And then on the north side, there's about 7 residential driveways. And then there's several unsignalized roads as well. There are no signalized roads within the project corridor. We also looked at obstructions. So there's driveway cross drains on those 31 driveways I mentioned to the south, as well as the 7 on the north. There's also cross drains of State Road 267, approximately 6 of those. There's also overhead electric. There's other utilities out there. We identified all those and put them in the feasibility report. In terms of the land use out there, you see from the green picture here, Edward Ball, Wakulla Springs has a large chunk of land along State Road 267 and to the south, and then Wakulla State Forest is located to the north. And as I mentioned, Rosa Shingles Trailhead is part of that Wakulla State Forest area, and there's trails located there. Here's a shot of the Rosa Shingles Trailhead on the north side. There are hiking trails, there's also off-road bike trails, and there's also a separate facility for your trailer for equestrian use. So the first part there on the right, you see a picture, that's the trailhead. Then you can also drive further into the forest state lands, and you can park your trailer and unload your horse. So it's a nice connection to both the St. Mark's Trail and the connection over to Wakulla Springs. In terms of the flooding, floodplain environmental issues, there's really no issues out there. The orange is the 500-year. The lighter blue is 100-year. So really the only locations where you cross McBride Slough, which we have bridges, so there really would be no issue with flooding. Cultural resources, there are no known cultural resources along the corridor. There's a lot, obviously, within Wakulla Springs State Park, but we're not going to be impacting those. From wetlands, again, where you cross at McBride Slough, we would avoid wetlands by crossing over them. Moving on to the alternative section, the typical section that we're recommending, the bridge itself. We'll talk about the intersection analysis, stakeholder alternatives, our public meeting, and then our evaluation criteria and our recommended alternative. So there is enough right-of-way to put the trail either on the north side or the south side. You'll have a good separation between the travel lane and the trail users. There are ditches on both sides. In some locations, you're going to have to reconstruct the ditch. In other locations, you could just stay away from the ditch closer to the edge of the right-of-way line. And we're showing 8 to 12 foot. You wouldn't want to go any less than 8 foot trail, but if you have to do that to avoid obstructions, et cetera, that's reasonable and still eligible for Sun Trail money from the state. This is a picture of a similar rural road, not with driveways in this picture, so it's a little cleaner shot, but this is what it could look like in the future. The crossing that I mentioned, getting over to Rosa Shingles Park from McCullough Springs, it could be something like this. The traffic volumes, as I mentioned, are low. You can easily cross. There aren't a lot of big queues or a lot of cars to worry about, but I think a flashing beacon like this picture shows would probably be the appropriate use. McBride Slough Bridge is the only bridge out there. It was built in 1964, 75 foot long. It's good condition. It was reconstructed in '89, so they put in a new bridge railing and the bridge guardrails, made it a little safer to cross. So there's a little room on the shoulders. Again, the superstructure and substructure in good condition. So there is an option of taking those shoulders and basically narrowing them down and using some of that to do a trail crossing. And there are locations in McCullough County where we've done that. For a 75-foot crossing, like we're showing here, constructing a new bridge would be probably more desirable. Certainly from the public meeting that we had, the folks had a desire to do that if possible, if there's available funding, as opposed to doing kind of the using the shoulder instead. As I mentioned, the intersection at Shadeville, so currently that cross-hatched area there on the right, that's there today. And as you approach the intersection from the south, you look back and it's kind of a yield/stop condition. It's also where the St. Mark's Trail crosses State Road 267. So it has some safety concerns. There hasn't been any fatalities or serious injuries there, but having said that, it just doesn't, the safety of it is an issue. So as part of our effort, we studied it, and also DOT was doing a resurfacing study over on State Road 267, including this area, and this is their 90% plans. So the recommended design change would be to make it back into a T intersection connecting with Old Woodville Highway to the north and removing all that pavement to the right there that's shown in the crosshatch. So you would no longer have to deal, when you're crossing the road, you don't have to worry about Shadeville. And DOT also pushed it a little bit further out to the east. They're also adding lighting at the intersection there, and they're also suggesting a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is what you see in Midtown. So those are the kind where you push a button and the cars are supposed to stop, as we all know, yes. And then the stakeholders we've reached out to is the State Forest and State Park of Wakulla. District 3, we've talked to Wakulla County and had meetings with the Friends of Wakulla Springs. They're very supportive, and as well as the utility owners that are located out there. Just to show you that we didn't go through a detailed analysis in terms of the obstructions. We broke them up into 9 different segments, and we'll show you guys in the matrix a little bit further down, as well as the driveways that are located out there, so we understand which side of the road is best to put the trail, recognizing that the majority of that 1.5 mile section is going to be within Wakulla Springs Service Road area. So looking at alternatives, we had some that went off system, but they were not supported by the landowners. So we really just have 2 alternatives, one on the north side and one on the south side. This one is the north side. It again starts at the service road at Wakulla Park Drive, goes for that 1.5 miles, crosses over to the north, connects over into Rosa Shingles, and then stays within DOT right-of-way, the remaining way over to St. Mark's Trail. There is no crossings of any major roads there. As I said, there's 7 driveways, and so that's a good option to consider. The other one is on the south side, so 1.5 miles on the service road. You would not cross over State Road 267. You stay on the south. You stay on DOT right-of-way all the way until you get to St. Mark's Trail. You would have to cross one road, Shadeville Highway, to get to the connection over there, and there are 31 driveway crossings on the south side. We held a public meeting on June 29th at Wakulla Springs Lodge. It was advertised on the CRTP homepage. We had a postcard sent out to the property owners within a quarter mile of the project. We emailed, had a big email to McCullough County, federal, state, and local elected officials, appointed officials, and we had a legal ad in the Wakulla News on June 15th, held the meeting on the 29th from 5:30 to 6:30. You can see we had boards. We had a pre-recorded audio of the project, a PowerPoint, and then we also had aerial boards that you could put notes and stickies and put in a location that you had concerns. And we had about 30 people show up. It was a good meeting, and so I listed the public comments that we received. Generally, or not generally, they were all favorable. They all want the project. There was no negative comments, no pushback. You see the first one, please push this plan. I am not going to live forever. I thought that was a good one to start with. Friends of Wakulla Springs were fully supportive. There was some discussion either north or south with shade. There is a little bit more shade on the south side, but again, there's more driveways, there's more utility conflicts, and the section that we're talking about is relatively short from a bike riding perspective. They want the trail option, the connection with Rosa Shingles. They thought that was important because that is another recreational facility. Another biking connection is nice to have as well. They really appreciated the location within the service road for the obvious reasons that I've already gone over, and the shade and the user's experience will be very much appreciated on that section there. So looking at those two options, north and south, both would use the service road, and going through the evaluation criteria, they are both highly supported from the community. You do have that extra trail connection on the north side with the Rosa Shingles, so it's 2 to 1. The agencies supported either side as well. There's more utility impacts with their 72 overhead electric poles that are on the south side along the corridor, so it's quite a few. You will be weaving in and around them as well as the driveway, so that's a higher potential impact. Drain swales, again, a little bit more on the south side. Shade is, I would say, medium on the north side, and it would be better in the afternoon on the south side. Trail offset's a little bit better on the north side because there's not as many obstructions, and so you can get 11-foot offset. And then you see the numbers going down from there. They're pretty much the same on signalized road crossings 7, 6, and commercial driveways 3 and 2, but the big difference is that residential driveway, there's 11 on the north side and 31 on the south side, so almost 3 times as many on the south side. Construction costs, we just gave a range. We could come up with a number, but decided to go with a range. It's just been very difficult to pinpoint construction costs nowadays, so we have a big range. And the cost, additional cost for the south side is really the utility, potential utility impacts and relocations associated with that, but they're very similar. We also assumed a new bridge would be constructed for the trail at McBride Slough, and that's in around $450,000 range to do a bridge. That's the option that we showed.
Hey, Gary, real quick, before we move on to the next thing, you said the separate bridge is about $450,000. What would, just to put it in context, how much would the bridge cost if it was part of the shoulder?
It's in the 250 range.
Okay, so about $200,000 difference
Correct.
between the two.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So really, getting onto all of that to recommend the alternative, considering the public input, looking at the physical obstructions that are out there, the environmental issues, constructability factors, engineering issues, et cetera. The recommendation is to go on the north side, so you would still be on the service road for the first 1.5 miles. We cross over and connect to Rosa Shingles Park. We get to the bridge, have a separate bridge crossing, and then go all the way over and connect to St. Mark's Trail for the 4.8 mile total. In terms of the next steps, FDOT has actually already advertised the design of the trail. It came out yesterday for hiring a consultant, so things are moving along really well. They've got notice to proceed with that contract for designing the trail in January of next year and completion in April. So now we need to find construction funding, of course, is the big ticket item. And Sun Trail, as you probably know, Sun Trail has additional funding through the legislature this past year, so we're hopeful that if we can get this on the Sun Trail network, it goes through conservation lands, it kind of checks all the dots, and so it would be a really good project to fund that. That's it.
Gary, thanks very much. Great presentation. Quick question. Does this project, as it's, once it goes into design and everything, is there anything that would need to be adjusted between that point and construction to make it qualify for Sun Trail funds?
I don't know, the offset is good. The width is also the other thing. So as long as you're 8 foot, and as long as you have a reasonable offset, well, I think it varies, but 11 foot's plenty. It would qualify. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Commissioner Messerschmidt.
I have a question. With regard to the lights, those aren't traffic, correct?
The lighting at the intersection?
Yes.
No, that's just overhead lights
I just wanted-
to make it lighter and brighter in the evening, yeah. People there may be riding in dusk or later in the evening, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In regards to the shade on the north side, is there a plan to add trees or any type of shade to that?
So that was a comment. Several people said, can you plant some trees? And certainly that could be done. You know, not as rapidly and fast as people would like, but that can be done. Yeah, there is enough room to do some of that.
Okay. And on the south side, the driveway crossings, were any of the property owners against it being on their side of the road?
No. Several people that live on the south side came, and they were not concerned about it. There was a comment that they liked the south side better. They didn't want people kind of wandering through the neighborhood on the north side. But that was really the one when they kind of picked the south side over the north side because of that reason.
Yeah, I mean, I would just think we should consider either making sure shade gets placed on the north side. There's a lot of multi-million-dollar projects that are built without shade that go underutilized because it's so hot in Florida, and I would hate people to take a pass on riding a trail on just a warm day because we didn't provide shade. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, good point, Commissioner Mallow. Any other comments, questions? All right, is there a motion?
We have two options with the agenda item. One's to approve the north side as the alternative to move forward with, and then there is, just as an update to the Sun Trails process that Gary brought up, the project is eligible because it is in the priority trail network for DEP. And we also, that process for Sun Trails, we're guessing that it will be open at the end of next week to start application process. So we'll be putting in for construction right away.
The staff to recommend both options 1 and 2, correct?
Yes.
Move options 1 and 2, Mr. Chair.
You're so kind.
Very thoughtful.
I'll second. Whose motion?
I
was that?
yield.
All right, motion to
Do some teamwork.
for options 1 and 2 made by Commissioner Richardson and seconded by Vice Chair Messerschmidt.
No,
You want to flip
I'll yield
it?
to Commissioner.
All right, yes, well said. Thank you. So much consideration around here.
Exactly.
I heard the motion was made by Commissioner Messerschmidt
There you go.
and seconded by Commissioner Richardson.
Thank
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. Nice job, Gary. Thank you very much. All right, next item.
And item 7C, the fiscal year 2024 budget. Suzanne.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Suzanne, I'm sorry, real quick to interrupt you. I just want to have the record reflect Commissioner Hosford is present. Thank you very much. Thanks, Suzanne.
Thank you. I just want to note that, again, the executive committee did see the budget at the meeting in August and made a recommendation to the board to approve. There's some things I just want to comment on quickly. One, the cost for our computer services, while it looks like it has doubled, that actually is a purchase for additional software capabilities for a platform that will be available internally for us and for our law enforcement partners. It will provide not only trip generation data, to locations where people are coming from and to and from, and safety data, but it will also allow access to real-time speed data for law enforcement. So there'll be maybe like a 4 or 5 day delay, but we can coordinate with them when they receive complaints and issues, and we can go back and see, is there really a problem there based upon real-time data? And the other thing is that due to that increase, it looks like we have an 18% increase in our operating cost. That is not so. The increase is less than 4%. So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Thank you. If you had any questions?
Thanks very much, Suzanne. Any comments, questions? Is there a motion to approve the fiscal year 24 budget?
So moved.
All right, motion's been made by Commissioner O'Keefe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Commissioner Richardson. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, Jack, next item.
Agenda item 7D, Suzanne.
Yes. All work this month for me. This item is being presented to you to request that we modify or amend the RMP, the Regional Mobility Plan, Regional Trails, our project priority list. We are proposing to add the US 90 multi-use trail from State Road 12 in Quincy all the way to west of Chattahoochee for inclusion on our region, on our priority list. It is currently on the DEP priority list and is under consideration also. It is part of the Sun Trails map or priority list. So again, we want to make sure that we reflect those priorities that the state has listed, and this will also allow us the opportunity to seek funding to move forward with a feasibility study for this project.
Yes, Commissioner Neesmith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The trail, the Sun Trail runs, it runs from what location to what location?
The Sun Trail is a statewide system. So it goes east, west, north, south, and many different locations throughout the state. But pretty much, again, you have a central east-west connection. This would be part of the northern connection from, ideally, from the east coast of Florida all the way to Pensacola. So this is one segment of it that we're looking to fund.
Just a little bit more clarification. In the Gadsden County side of things, it would begin in Havana. Actually would begin down by the Orchard Pond Greenway, cross over Iron Bridge Road, and then go on a northern route along State Road 12, and then connect to US 90 and go from US 90 from Quincy to, we'll call it Jackson County line.
Through Gretna, through Chattahoochee.
Yep, through Gretna, Chattahoochee, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments, questions? Quick one. On the project priority list, number 3, the Tallahassee to Havana Trail, what's the latest on that? What's your best guess on when we might start design?
So Greg just turned his microphone off, so.
So as the board may recall, in November of last year, 2022, you all actually approved the feasibility study for that project. What we are doing is actually doing further, beginning this Friday, we actually have a meeting with Gadsden County staff to move that project forward and get some input from them. The next step for that would actually be, although the feasibility study was complete in November, we would be doing more coordination actually with citizens and folks along that corridor, which would include obviously unincorporated Gadsden County, town of Havana. We are actually looking ultimately to get a commitment from Gadsden County for this project, because for us to move forward, since it is on the Sun Trails network, we would need a commitment for maintenance for that from the county to move forward with actually an application to move that project ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate it. Yes, Commissioner Neesmith.
Yes, sir. Who are you meeting with? Are you meeting with the Growth Management Department?
Yeah, we are actually meeting with Justin Steele on Friday initially, and then from there, shortly after, we'll be having some more meetings with county management.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And by the way, Commissioner Neesmith is a mover and shaker in Gadsden County. So if you have any questions or need some coordinations, you can talk to my other brother here. So
I have good mentors.
No pressure.
Yeah, none at all, Commissioner.
Any other comments or questions? All right, is there a motion on this item?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, motions are made by Commissioner Neesmith, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next, we're on item number 7E. Jack.
Not Suzanne. So he's very busy. As part of the census, some of the products that come out of that we need to address as the CRTPA include an apportionment plan. Later on, we'll be addressing functional classification as well as a smooth urban boundary. And we'll be bringing those other things to you later. Functional classification is actually about a year out. And that's a region-wide assessment of functional classification and working with the department and local governments to address those issues. But one of the first things that we have to do is an apportionment plan. I think it's probably incorrectly titled reapportionment because realistically, if you look at the table that is identified as the apportionment plan in the agenda item, the population numbers have increased and decreased, but overall as a network, they've stayed the same approximately. So there's no real change in terms of the population numbers and the percentages and the votes that would typically be assessed as part of the CRTPA for each member. Additionally, one of the things that we'd have to take a look at by statute is that make sure that the county representation is at least 1/3 of the board, and we've met that as that criteria. So we're good to go, and our recommendation is to not change any of the voting membership recommendations in terms of percentages and votes and keep it the way it is since those numbers fall within those categories as they were previously.
Thanks.
Again, this is the first step, and we'll be bringing more of this type of information back to you in the next couple months and within the next year.
Okay, great, perfect. Any comments or questions?
Move option number 1 is recommended by staff.
All right, Commissioner Richardson has moved option 1, seconded by Commissioner Williams-Cox. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we are finished with the CRTPA action and moving on to the Florida Department of Transportation report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department just has one update for the board today. It's an upcoming resurfacing project on Capitol Circle from Appalachia Parkway to Park Avenue. On schedule to later this month. So we'll look for a start date shortly after the 1st of January. We'll have that short construction project underway fairly quickly along that corridor. With that, that concludes any update by the department. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Paulk. Any questions or comments for FDOT? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Well, it'll start actual construction 1st of January. I don't have the contract days in front of me at this point, but I can get that information to you. Yes. Yes, ma'am. We'll have our public involvement outreach begin around the 1st of December to allow everybody time to be able to adjust any schedule 1st of January. Okay.
Make sure you include Leon County Schools so they can get that information out to their parents and to transportation and what have you as well. And of course, City of Tallahassee Star Metro. Make sure that we know how to navigate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. Commissioner O'Keefe.
I defer to Commissioner Matlow. I think he had before.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Commissioner Matlow.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to, we've been talking a lot at City and County about West Pensacola Street, particularly in regards to some of the trash and litter. And I think local government will probably have to do a better job of making sure at least the trash cans out there are changed and the illegal dumping's handled. But we were out there collecting trash last week, and we met a gentleman. He had the contract to do the street sweeping as well as the edging. And he said on other local or other FDOT roadways, he also had a contract to do litter abatement in the right-of-way along the sidewalks. I was wondering if that's something we could look at adding collaboratively with the city and county trying to do what they can, but also adding a second stop of collecting trash along there.
Yeah, we can look at what our current asset maintenance contract covers on that particular corridor, and if we need to make some adjustments, we can look into
Okay, thank you.
coordinating with the local government.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, I believe the state created a program to allow phosphate mining waste to be used in road construction. I'm curious if any of that has been contemplated for the region that we cover.
That was just recently passed in our most recent legislative session, as far as I know. At my level, I do not know how that's going to work its way into the department's work program requirements. In fact, I don't think anyone does at this point in time. I would look for that to be considered by DOT in this upcoming cycle, and then potentially at the earliest be included in construction projects in our state fiscal year 25.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments or questions? All right, Mr. Paul, thank you very much. I do want to, before we move on to the next item, I want to take the chair's prerogative and recognize someone who'd like to speak. We've got Commissioner Bill Proctor here. It's actually not on, this is out of order on the agenda, but I'm going to use the chair's prerogative to allow that to do that. He knows where I live, so. Commissioner Proctor, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a good one. First to Attorney Thornton Williams, condolences to you, Attorney Williams, on the loss of your mother. And I know that services were held 3 Saturdays ago. You've not heard from me or my family, but do know that our thoughts of you and your family have been very much in our hearts. Very sorry. Members, I rise today to, on this portion, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for affording me a couple of minutes. US 319 South, called Crawfordville Road. In the some times ago, we made a commitment that when Wakulla developed their roadway to Leon County's line, that Leon County would then come up with the rest of the resources to move from 363, which is the Wakulla Springs cutoff, and that we would make whole in a perfect reality 319 4-lane to meet Wakulla County. Wakulla has done its part. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful. They're doing a great job. It's time that this commitment and promise would be made. But even if you were not at this table then to have heard it, from an aerial view, it's just totally disjunctive that that gap from 363 would not connect to the county's line. It just logistically is inexplicable. Martians and the UFOs that look down, among the things that are puzzling, they find that to be. Secondly, I would offer and ask you to go back into the files of the late 90s, and you will find, and I'm asking for that study to come back, where FDOT had $28 million to widen Adams Street from the post office, Orange Avenue, up to Gaines Street, And President Humphreys, members of that neighborhood, beat back that proposal, and that $28 million is likely gone to Naples somewhere. I would like and think that that corridor in the morning, that corridor in the afternoons, it needs some help. I know that Florida University exists there, and Dr. Humphreys said he did not want another Tennessee Street built by his campus. I say to us, and I'm sure Florida State don't want a Tennessee Street by their campus, but these regional roadways that allow for traffic to come from 98 and 319 at that part of the world is regional. You can get to our state's capital on a 4-lane road from Georgia, 319 north from Thomas County. You can get to our capital community from US 90 west. You can get to our capital on a 4-lane road from US 90 east. I'm asking y'all, can we, for what is designated as an emergency evacuation route, it's time to forward coastal communities that are experiencing storms, such as the one we had 2 weeks ago. We have to make it accessible, a 4-lane road from the coast to get to our state's capital. I'm so appreciative, Mr. Chairman. I'm asking you to please lift this up, both these issues, as priority. Thank you all.
Commissioner Proctor, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. All right. Item number, actually, we'll move on to, if anyone would like to discuss what Commissioner Proctor's talked about, let's go ahead and save that for items for discussion for CRTPA members. Let's move on to the Executive Director's report. Jack.
The only thing that I'd like to just let you all know again about the Sun Trails program, we'll be looking to submit that application for 267, and we're also looking at submitting the Havana Trail as well as the US 90 West Trail into that process. So those are the kind of things that we're working on, and as well, Commissioner you'll be happy to know that, Mr. Smith, that you'll be happy to know that the trail from Woodville Highway, or from, I'm sorry, from St. Mark's Trail to Lighthouse Road will be under construction by the beginning. That'll end the coastal trail construction. 24 miles.
All right, anything else?
Nope, I'm good.
Great. Happy trails. All right, well, now we've got.
Mr. Chair, I think Suzanne has something.
Oh, Suzanne, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Is holding a ride event October 1st is a kickoff for Mobility Month in October. There will be an expo there. It's going to be at the St. Mark's Trailhead. They anticipate having food trucks. There'll be information booths. We will be doing a helmet fitting. So come get a helmet fit and get a free helmet. Then get on your bike or your skateboard and enjoy the rest of the day. So please keep that in mind, and if you can make it, we'd love to see you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. All right, next we've got items from CRTPA board members. Any comments? Questions from staff? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Well, I'm going to ask about the rails. The Assistant U.S. Secretary for the Department of Transportation was in town a few months ago, bringing money, $35 million, and he's from Thomasville, so he knows about this area. And one of the things he asked us about rails, about trains, and so it sounds like they have money that they want to give. If we can figure our way out of how we can try to make this work. So can we get an update on where we are with bringing train through here, through Tallahassee, maybe at the next meeting or something, or even prior to, or if you can give us something today, that would be awesome.
We can always provide an update, get you some more information about where we're at on that, see where the state's at with their plan as well, because I believe I'm correct that they were updating their plan as well. So I'll get with Greg and we'll produce something on next meeting.
Okay.
You know, the Tallahassee Magazine's putting out an article on this very soon on restoration of passenger rail. And as you know, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana are all members of the Southern Rail Commission. They have been working diligently with each other and with the federal government to get passenger rail restored. And the Mardi Gras service, which will run twice a day from New Orleans to Mobile, is forthcoming. Mm-hmm. There have been some delays on the construction of the Mobile train station, so that's delayed their actual launch of the service, but that's coming. It's going to happen soon. And so I think what that does is that puts additional pressure on us in Florida to do two things: to join the SRC, and then number two, try to figure out how we're going to connect Mobile to Pensacola to Tallahassee to Jacksonville.
Right.
So it's disappointing that we're not part of the SRC right now as we speak, but the fact that they're working very heavily to bring that rail service all the way up, almost right up to our Panhandle state line, is going to put, I think it's good news for us because it makes it even more glaring. When you look at the map of rail, passenger rail for the country, you see a big blank spot right in North Florida, mm-hmm. and we need to fix that.
And well, North Florida, you're specifically because in Central and South Florida, as you know, Brightline is already going from West Palm south, and they're working on, I think, Orlando to West Palm and then beyond. So we need to find the mayonnaise and the mustard so we can catch up. This is the capital of Florida. And so we need to keep up with the rest of the state, what's going on, and with the other states in our area. So I don't know what the holdup is from joining whatever it is that we need to join, but maybe it's part of the update. We can get an understanding of why this is such a hurdle, and what do we need to do, if there's something we need to do as electeds to lobby or support joining this, if that's the hurdle. And I know that there's some construction that needs to take place, to make sure, but this joining an alliance should not be so difficult if there's a political will to do it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Williams-Cox. I agree 110%. Any other comments or questions for items for discussion? Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this morning I had a briefing with the Blueprint Board, or staff, rather, board, Blueprint staff. And as you know, one of the items on the agenda for Thursday's meeting is the North Monroe Gateway project, which, you know, we've been working on and is one of the Blueprint projects. And the Citizens Committee had recommended extending that from I-10 Fred George Road. To do that would be an additional $15 million for that project for median, landscaping, and sidewalk addition. What we talked about during the briefing, and that would be paid for out of Blueprint dollars, which are local tax dollars, and that is a state road. And so what we talked about was bringing that issue here to the CRTPA to request that we make this one of our priority projects for funding through the state for that $15 million. And so I wanted to bring that before the board today. I saw Autumn.
I saw Autumn
Earlier. I thought she was. Autumn, could you add to what I've just mentioned about the extending the North Monroe Street Gateway from I-10 to Fred George and the additional projects and funding that we talked about this morning? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Thank you, Autumn. Thanks for being here.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Right, so we have our Blueprint meeting coming up on Thursday night, and with that meeting is a budget workshop, and there's a separate attachment in the budget workshop materials that address the North Monroe Gateway project, the Blueprint project. The Blueprint project is currently defined at 7th Avenue all the way up to I-10. There was a request, a direction by the IA board to bring back some additional information, the IA board's consideration for expanding that project north of I-10, period. So in 2021, there was a citizens task force that developed a report on improvements in the North Monroe corridor, and that task force addressed improvements going all the way into downtown, but all the way out to Fred George Road, so spanning beyond the Blueprint project area. So what this Blueprint attachment does for the budget workshop is provide a cost estimate of roughly $15 million for the infrastructure improvements that are recommended through that task force north of I-10 for the IA board's consideration. But those improvements are made within the FDOT right-of-way, as Commissioner Richardson mentioned, North Monroe being a state road, and they would include sidewalk, landscape, and enhanced medians. And just one more thing to add, Blueprint has been extremely successful in bringing in DOT funds onto the North Monroe corridor. In fact, we've brought in over $16 million within that project area from 7th Avenue to I-10, and many of those improvements are exactly that same thing, sidewalks, medians, and landscaping.
Calder, thank you very much. Mr. Richardson, any other questions for Ms. Calder?
So our question of staff, I guess, Mr. Chairman, would be, what do we need to introduce that item and request as part of our project priority?
Thank you, Commissioner Richardson.
Suzanne.
Again.
Thank you. The board would need to make a motion at our meeting, and we can add it to the next meeting, or I don't know if they can do it now. Again, I'll defer to Thornton, but to amend our bicycle and pedestrian project priority list to include various locations, because we have worked closely with Leon County to identify those missing gaps. So we really can't put clean limits, as we know, because it's intermittent throughout the corridor. So we would need to get that information, get the request from the board to add it to the priority list, and then we would submit that amended priority list to FDOT for consideration for funding.
Thanks, Suzanne. Mr. Williams.
Chair, Commissioners, what you would do is agenda the item for the next meeting. You don't need a vote to do it. The purpose of the members' input is to ask items to be added to the agenda as an option, and that's what you just did. Right. Once it's agendaed and noticed and the public is aware of it, then you can decide what action.
Thank you, Mr.
So just to clarify, so Commissioner Richardson's requesting that that come back as a future agenda item.
Our next.
Okay, at our next meeting. Ms. Lex, thank you very much. Mr. Williams, thank you. Mr. Burke, do you have a comment or question?
Sure. Kind of tangentially related to this. Also in November, we'll be bringing to you the congestion management plan. And actually, we have completed that, and that looks at, as its name suggests, a focus on congestion within the four-county area, but also a strong effort associated with that. Effort is safety. And there's been an analysis with regards to the high injury network within the CRTPA region, and actually along portions of North Monroe, north of I-10. Those have been identified as being a high injury network, on the high injury network as we developed it within that. So I think that kind of provides a basis for moving forward with this potentially and adding it through the process in November.
Great, great. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any other? Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Mr. Chair, with the ruling from our attorney, I wanted to make sure when we go back and revisit the rail that I didn't ask for an agenda item. I asked for an update, but I'm asking for an agenda item that includes an update. I want to be clear. I don't want to come back and you say that you asked for an update, you ain't asked for an agenda
Understood.
Commissioner Williams-Cox, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Anything
We'll
else?
name that segment after
Yeah,
Williams
yeah, exactly. Any other comments or questions? All right. Mr. Williams, I wanted to offer our condolences to you. Losing a parent is very hard. Offer our All right. Well, that is it for the agenda today. I think it was a good meeting, about an hour. Well, I think we got a lot accomplished. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time. This meeting is adjourned.